Hi, this is Ron Kinscherf. Welcome to Thank You for Your Service, brought to you by 8 Open and the Veterans Assistance Commission. And we actually are talking to a veteran that owns 8 Open, Jared Tipton. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so tell me about the decision to join.
So the decision to join, I was 24 and I was living in North Carolina. I was a chef at the Hotel Marriott down there.
Okay.
And I was working out at the gym, running on the treadmill, and it was right during the Iraq surge.
Okay.
They had General Petraeus in front of Congress giving his congressional testimony about the Iraq surge and how beneficial it's been. And the media was kind of like crucifying him, talking about General Petraeus. And so, all politics aside, I mean, I felt like I supported our troops, and it was like my patriotic duty. If I was willing and able, I should. So I ended up joining.
Okay, so did you have any thought of that when you were in high school? Because a lot of guys join right after high school.
No, I mean, I kind of like nothing serious. I mean, you watch like the cool Hollywood movies and you want to do it, but nothing serious up to that point.
Was anybody in your family associated with the Army? Or
no one in my family was in the military.
So what did your family think about your decision?
Oh, my mom was a little mad at first. Probably because I text her and told her about it. It's usually how I tell her things. So she was, I mean, obviously kind of upset, more scared than anything at first. And then she came around to it once she realized I was serious and what I was doing.
So you were a Marine, right?
Correct.
So you joined the Marines, and where was boot camp and all that fun stuff?
Boot camp was Parris Island, South Carolina. So I enlisted out of North Carolina. I went to South Carolina. Most people enlist out of Quincy. They go to California. They call them Hollywood Marines.
Right.
But I went to Parris Island.
Parris Island. Okay, so were you one of the older ones in your class?
Yeah. So, yep. So it was the first time. So when I went to culinary school, I was always the youngest guy. I was 18. Everyone else was like 26, 27. But at boot camp and Marine Corps, I was kind of one of the older guys. So that was kind of a tough pill to swallow. A lot of like my higher ups like telling me what to do and talking down to me were like all younger than me. So that was kind of like an adjustment of sorts. But
the guys you were training with, did they look up to you though as kind of an older, not a father figure necessarily, maybe a bigger brother type guy? Because
more like a leadership.
Yeah. So when you got to boot camp, did you have a leadership position?
Yeah. So I went. Initially I became team leader first before squad leader. But like my first unit went to was in Norfolk, Virginia, and I was a team leader there for the deployment that we went on.
Okay, and then you ended up in California, right?
Yep.
So, and you were a member of the Fast Marines.
Yeah.
So how is a Marine faster than the other Marines, I guess? What's a Fast Marine?
So FAST stands for Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Team.
Okay.
And so it was funny before, I didn't really know what it was. The recruiter was like, yeah, you're like the SWAT team of the Marine Corps, which like sounds really super cool, so you want to do it. And then when you go there, you realize it may not be as cool as it made out to be.
Right.
But I say we're lucky because up till that point, the Fast Marines hadn't really done anything for years.
Okay.
But then when you deploy to a Navy base in Bahrain, you kind of act as like a quick reactionary force if anything would happen in that Middle Eastern region.
So was it like a SWAT deployment? Like you're the first ones on scene?
Yeah. So it was right. I don't know if people remember the big Arab Spring when Egypt, the government was overthrown.
Okay.
So we went to Yemen. It was right at the time when they were trying to throw out the Yemeni dictator.
Right.
So we had to go in and we commandeered like the Sheraton Hotel and provided security while all like the American personnel lived at the hotel.
Okay, so that's almost movie-like in a way.
Yeah, it was, and it was pretty sweet.
Okay, so when you were at Bahrain, did you know what was going on around the world at that point, or were you guys pretty isolated to that before you were sent somewhere? Did you have an idea of like what was going on in Yemen before you got there, or were you just deciding, okay, we got to protect this hotel?
You have like a whole workup before you go on deployment, and so at the time we kind of knew because there was another fast platoon that got sent to Egypt that had to reinforce the embassy there. So we kind of didn't know if we were going to relieve them in Egypt or if something else kind of happened. And once we went to Bahrain, that's when Yemen started deteriorating.
Okay. Did you, as a fast Marine, did you see action, or is it just more about we're going to secure the building or whatever, and then? So
as a fast Marine, we secured the building and did typical security stuff. We we weren't like in combat necessarily there. We got to see all the fighting going on outside of like where we were at between the rebels and between the government. We'd have a mortar round that like dropped maybe like within the compound of the hotel. I don't know if that was like accident fire between whether it's government or the rebels trying to get the U.S. more involved. But
so did you? But then you went to Afghanistan eventually, right? So was that as a fast Marine too, right?
No. So Afghanistan was in the infantry unit. So when you do fast Marines, You do that for the first 2.5 years, and the last 2.5 years you deploy as a normal infantry unit.
Okay, so got to Afghanistan. That was during freedom, wasn't it?
Yep.
Okay, so when you got there, did you? They gave you a goal, which is to eliminate the Taliban. I'm assuming, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so I always wondered, how do you know who the bad guys were? Because they really didn't wear like uniforms like you guys were. So
I mean, that's definitely, we spend almost a year and a half, well, almost a year training to the workup at that point. And they do training called COIN, which is counter-insurgency training, and just learning how to do that. So a lot of the work we did was almost like police investigative work that you do. We had to do a lot of biometrics, vehicle checkpoints. They had these binoculars, kind of like they look in, they scan the retina, and then if anyone had a record, I guess, they would pop and
then you'd arrest them and go from there. So did you ever get like what you see in the movies, knock on doors and go through cities? And
we had to go through a couple cities. Basically, really great technology. They had this basically a camera just like spins around taking pictures, and then you can reverse all the pictures to where you're almost going back in time, like with video stills. Right. And so we had traced this guy who was in a goat herd, and he planted an IED on one of the routes that our patrols would go on. So we were able to trace it back to what village he had come from, and then we ended up going to that village and searching the home.
You're able to find him. Yeah. Okay. All right. So now, how close do you get to the guys that you're with when you're deployed?
Oh, man, it's super close. I mean, we spend, when you deploy for 9-12 months, I mean, you spend every moment with them. So that's a lot. And the friendship's always there. I'd say, I had my best friend from the Marine Corps I hadn't seen maybe for about 4 years after I got out. And when I went to go get my food truck, it was near where he lived.
Yeah.
And so I ended up visiting him, and we sat down and ate some crabs and talked for 4 hours. It was like we hadn't even missed each other. So pick right up.
Now, you mentioned you were older when you deployed. You were 24. Yeah. Now, when you got over to Afghanistan and Bahrain, were you one of the older guys then also?
Yeah.
Did you take over a big brother type role?
Yeah. So I ended up being the older, more experienced. The platoon commander, they automatically kind of looked at you to put you in a leadership billet because you were older, more mature. So,
how was it when you were I don't say released? That sounds awful, but when you were when your term was up, and you came back home.
It was definitely a change, right? It was easy and hard, right? Easy in the sense that in the military, everything's dictated. And from the moment you wake up to the moment you get off work, what you're doing, how you're doing it is all told to you. Healthcare is all taken care of. But there is a lot of things that, have a lot of freedoms. Right, they said the military can control most of your life, so that was a blessing and a curse. Get out, all of a sudden, healthcare is a big thing, and figuring out healthcare, for me, my wife, and my kids. In the military, you get paid the 1st and 15th, guaranteed, no matter what. In the real world, you take time off. You don't get paid. You don't get guaranteed paycheck, guaranteed everything. So
it's funny you call it the real world, as opposed to what you went through overseas, which is you're in danger all the time. But when you come back, that's the real world. Now, you hear people have mental issues and all that type of stuff when you come out. Were you okay from that aspect? Or were there nightmares and that type of thing?
I think, I think everyone's experience is different, and what you experience, what you see, and how you deal with it. I think all of it's given me a good perspective, just how my life is now compared to what I went through, or how I know that the life is in other countries. I mean, it's very blessing to be here. I mean, I tell my kids a lot of it's first world problems, especially when they get real upset about certain things that are pretty small.
That was my next question, is just how lucky now do you feel versus before you went over that you're a member of this country?
It's very lucky. I mean, I know we're not perfect and there's tons of things we can do better, but being in Yemen and seeing there's neighborhoods where the power and water would get shut off because they didn't like the president. I mean, that's just can you imagine that happened here? The mayor Quincy was you don't get any power because you don't like me.
That'd be something else. So do you feel, looking back on it, that you had an advantage from a maturity perspective for when you came home? It was easier for you to deal with coming home being a little bit older than the normal Marine would be.
I think from the start, from boot camp to the end, being older and being more mature, it helped out a lot. When you go to boot camp, as tough as boot camp is, it's all like a mental game.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing like that going in, being older, easier to deal with that. Coming back, being more mature, it's easier to deal with what you might be feeling or going through.
Yeah, those life challenges you're talking about. Yeah. So you were a chef before you went over.
Correct.
Did you miss that life when you were over there? Because that's a big, going from a chef to doing what you were doing is a pretty drastic change.
Yeah. So it's funny, if you look in the chef industry, like the discipline that you have in the military is very similar to like chef. Like you have rank structure and guest chef and all that. The hours are kind of similar, but it was I actually did a decent amount of cooking. Like when people find out that I was a chef before I got in, anytime we'd have like a platoon shindig or something, I was always the one on the grill.
There you go.
And whatnot.
So you were in North Carolina when you enlisted, but you're back here in town.
Yep.
What brought you back?
Well, so after the Marine Corps, we moved back to North Carolina, where I enlisted from, to work for the chef I worked for before the Marine Corps. Okay. Because when I joined, I was going to go infantry, and I was always going to go back to being a chef. Sometimes I think I could have done a different job that would have given me different skills to go outside the military, but I was going to be a chef, so I wanted to go and do the infantry thing. We were there for almost 5 years after the Marine Corps, and when you live, far away from any family members or like real friends, and you have a family, 3 kids at the time, you definitely want to be closer to family. So we decided it was just time to come back.
So if I had to guess, the best part about being a chef is when somebody comes up to you and really likes what you created.
Yeah, that's probably the
I've
biggest
seen you
thing.
in here many times. It's like you run by the tables and
Yep.
That's got to be a very satisfying.
That's probably that's the most satisfying thing about being a chef is just creating something and someone actually enjoying it. Because everyone's got different tastes. So, I could make one thing, a guy could love it, make another thing, and a guy could really hate it. So when they really do love it, it's good.
Well, thank you for your service, sir.
Of course.
All
Thanks for having me.
Jared Tipton. This is brought to you by you.
That's right.
Here at 8 Open and the Veterans Assistant Commission. I'm Ron Kinscherf for Muddy River News.